This video is brought to you by Keeps. When you were hardcore malding over PvP in Lost Ark, give it a try. Okay, today I'm finally ready to give an in-depth review of Lost Ark, which is a free-to-play ARPG MMO hybrid that launched about 2 years ago. This part will need a bit of explaining because Lost Ark is not a new game on the market. It's actually been around since late 2019, but recently, in February of 2022 to be exact, it launched on Steam for Western markets facilitated by Amazon. We're not dealing with fresh IP here. We're dealing with a game that is tremendously popular in other countries but wasn't being actively served to certain areas, such as the United States, until recently. The game was extremely popular in countries like Korea and Russia, but now, after its expanded release in February, it's reaching a concurrent Steam player count above 1 million, with mixed reviews and impressions. Doing a review for something like Lost Ark is kind of like threading a needle. On the one hand, you have to have enough hours, you need to understand the game fully, and you need to be able to discuss it from a position of authority. This requires time, and lots of it. You need to spend enough of your time exploring the world and engaging with mechanics to be able to discuss them with accuracy, because if you don't, then the review is worthless. On the other hand, however, you need to be conscious of how long that takes because the optimal window for a content creator, like myself, rapidly closes post-release. People are looking for reviews when a game is popular to help inform their decision making, and if you don't complete your analysis until the accessible market has largely made up its mind, you fail to reach a lot of those people. The window never fully closes per se, and quality almost always wins out over speed directly, but balancing these two factors can be what makes or breaks the review process entirely. With all that said, I believe that I am finally able to review this game accurately and discuss the incredible scope of this title while also detailing its many flaws. The format here is pretty simple. I'm going to walk through chronologically and discuss all the different various gameplay systems as you begin to engage with them, because if I do it any other way, I'm almost certainly going to forget things. It's a pretty big game. Alright, before going any further, it's time for today's video sponsor. Demographically speaking, most people who watch this channel are men ages 18 to 45. That's the overwhelming majority. That is also the exact same demographic that is the most exposed to the problem of hair loss, which is where Keeps comes in. Keeps can help prevent hair loss with generic versions of the only two products on the entire market that are FDA approved. Keeps has more 5-star reviews than any of its competitors. You can order and get treated directly from your own home, and some men even experience hair growth while using Keeps, not just retention. For a limited time, using the link down below, you can get 50% off your first order. Again, that's 50% off your first order if you click the link down below in the description. I get paid to say this, but Keeps has long supported the channel, so if you're in the market for hair loss prevention treatment of any kind, definitely check them out. Big thank you to Keeps for sponsoring the channel. With all of that said, let's finally get started. You begin the game at level 10, not level 1. This is a change that was implemented before the Western version of the game came out, but it persists now, and I don't really think it's a bad thing. Starting the game at level 10, you are dropped into a sort of celestial arena, a recurring location later on for major milestones, and you are then able to choose a subclass. The game is an isometric ARPG/MMO hybrid. Think of games like Path of Exile or Diablo 3, but with much more of a significant focus on the MMO aspects in particular. There are 5 classes and a total of 15 subclasses. Some of these classes are actually very, very similar, such as the male and one of the female variant types for the gunslinger and martial artist, but by and large, they have unique playstyles and mechanics. One thing to note is that the subclass distribution is not entirely equal. If you choose Warrior, as an example, you get 3 subclass options, and if you choose Assassin, you only get 2. I would advise looking up some more information before actually choosing, because these different options will have a tremendous amount of impact on your playstyle. Now, if you end up playing a lot more, then obviously you'll have multiple characters. There's a mechanic for that. I'll discuss it more later on. And there's some other considerations as well that make things easier, but again, I would advise looking up a little bit of information before you make your initial choice. Starting at level 10, you immediately pick your subclass. This diverges from standard formats where you need to do a portion of content first and earn those powers, but it also makes things easier because you're actually able to test a vertical slice of the character's skill set in a demo arena. This means that you can truly take your time and decide what playstyle fits you best. And honestly, I think more games need to do something similar. It's very much appreciated and helps you jump in knowing that the decision you made was probably the right one. Once this is done, you begin your journey. Here's where I need to level some criticism at the title. Okay, so brace yourself, all the super fans out there. There's going to be some critical analysis here. Because the main story progression for probably like 10 or so hours at least, it's boring and completely linear. There is a hurdle to overcome here for new players because Lost Ark manages to somehow hide the actual value of the game behind a big ass wall of subpar content. To some degree, story is, yes, subjective, but I found it completely impossible to engage with this narrative or take it even seriously. It's bad. The basic premise is that there are two worlds in conflict, essentially order and chaos, or good and evil. These two worlds are opposites, and one of them is now invading the other. Again, they tried before and failed, I guess, as you try to stop it. Demons and necromancers and really stereotypical bad guys are just starting to pop up everywhere, and you need to reassemble this thing called an arc that has 7 pieces scattered around the 7 continents, and that's basically the entire story. It feels cheap. It actually feels like a browser game, like the campaign and the story and the way the quests are set up. It all feels like a browser-based game from like 8 or 10 years ago. Like it feels really, really cheap. Right from the start at level 10, you are stronger than everyone. All the NPCs basically just worship you. They're always calling you savior or master, even in some cases, and it feels like the entire world simply exists to blow smoke up your ass, as you defeat things that are quite honestly trivial for the first maybe 10 to 15 hours. I can't stress this enough, there is no difficulty here at all whatsoever, for the main story campaign at least. You will not be challenged, period. You will not be punished. You simply walk through the world experiencing exposition with just bad voice acting and just the writing's not great either. Just bad exposition in a one-direction linear pathway the entire time. The quests, these are literally 30-second, if that, maybe 15 seconds sometimes, 30-second tasks more often than not, where you walk 5 steps, you search a junk pile for 3 seconds with an interactable, quest over. Here's 20,000 XP. Okay, get a note, read it, click a cage 2 feet away. Here's 16,000 XP. Oh, you arrived in a new area? Spontaneous quest where you kill 3 things that are right next to you in one hit. Here's 50,000 XP, etc., etc. It's not just easy, it's almost actually pointless. And the quests are also designed to keep you moving rather than fully exploring any particular area. And I do appreciate that there's no backtracking, but that's not the most important thing. Having everything be tightly clustered and stupidly easy to do all at once for 5 seconds and then another area, that's not the most important thing in a campaign. Like, that should not be the only focus. And it feels like that was their entire focus. I would still advise maybe branching out a bit, because some of the dungeons are actually quite good in terms of set pieces and atmosphere, but the main story skips quite a few of those, so if you have any interest, you can look for more dungeons around the world. I would actually advise that. You don't need to do hard mode, by the way. The gear doesn't matter at that stage at all, and you will just passively click your way through this game at whatever speed you choose with absolutely no challenge. The combat itself is rather fun, slotting 8 skills, slowly unlocking more, and then activating their tripod enhancements, one of 3 choices, 3 different times at certain thresholds, but again, you don't need to worry about optimizing a loadout, early on at least, or perfecting skill synergies until much, much later in the game. As you progress through the story, you start to run into more and more systems. This game absolutely bombards you with instant gratification. There will always be some type of shiny thing or reward sitting just around the corner. It's like they made it deliberately so that you could always directly see a little notification or a quest marker or some type of reward somewhere, because that will most likely maximize playtime, right? They're preying on the idea that if there's always something to click on next, that you'll never log off. There's the collectibles tab with thousands of collectibles all around the enormous map. There's the roster tab, which is a persistent set of bonuses for a group of your characters on that one server, and it levels in tandem to your combat level. There's a massive collection of cards that you slot for different bonuses when you have partial or complete sets. There are pets with their own bonuses, and you can re-roll those bonuses at the pet trainer, and a whole bunch more. NPCs, a lot of them anyway, have a rapport system, kind of like a romance system of sorts, where you can gain favor with them. You do this by performing certain emotes, and you unlock a bunch of emotes around the world. That's a whole different unlockable tree. Or complimenting them, or giving gifts to them. And the rewards are anything from cards to potions to actual stat increases, anything. The adventure tab, which you build out by exploring specific landmarks or slaying certain monsters and collecting region-specific drops, will give you respawn tokens, or phoenix feathers is what they're called, chests that contain gifts for the NPCs, a whole bunch of different like chests and randomized pouches, etc. And I could probably sit here all day just discussing the sheer number of individual reward types that the game throws at you, and they bombard you with them. And they do this just because you exist. Just by logging into the game, everything around you is like, oh my god, you're amazing, have all these rewards, yeah! There are world bosses with bonus rewards the first time you slay them, and there are more vendors and exchanges than I can honestly even remember off the top of my head, each one of them based on some sort of different collectible or currency. Mokoko seeds, or silver and gold, or world tree leaves, or island exploration tokens, or pirate coins, bloodstones, seals, crystals, and that's not even all of them. There are more at endgame, a bunch more, and the sheer number of these different currency and collectible types will go from interesting to completely excessive by the time you reach endgame. To use the auction house, you need Fions, which is a premium item from the cash shop, and you can only use the cash shop if you have crystals or royal crystals, and you can buy regular crystals with gold, and that's just one example of how convoluted this game is. Guilds, they have their own currency type called bloodstones. The NPC rapport system has another currency type called Providence Stones or something like that. And eventually, the Stronghold has even more of these mechanics. I'll get to the Stronghold in just a bit because chronologically, the next major thing you start to learn is that there are gathering professions. These professions allow you to mine ore, cut down trees, gather herbs, etc., and they have their own set of skills, tools, and even an energy bar. I haven't seen any problems with this energy bar, as in I'm not really depleting it and getting frustrated yet, but I do worry that it will play a role later on perhaps. For dedicated skillers, it might become a barrier, but so far it's just sort of there, a redundant system that I don't see a use for and haven't run into as a problem. And yeah, it hasn't been something that stopped me, let's put it that way. Though, to be fair, I don't do much skilling in these games, I never have. I'm still very low level in those categories on all of my characters, so take that for what you will. These resources are then used for a number of different things, but one of their largest applications is in the Stronghold. The Stronghold is just your personal island, where you build buildings, send out automated missions, and craft items. There are a bunch of buildings here requiring a large amount of resources and time, real-world time, to construct, which makes the Stronghold a slowly building but very large portion of the game if a player wishes to engage with it. Again, similar to the gathering professions, I haven't invested a whole lot here, but so far the value of the Stronghold seems pretty self-evident and high if you are willing to spend some time utilizing the various different systems. After that, at least I think it was after, if not it was right around the same time, you unlock PvP. And this is an area where Lost Ark absolutely shines, and it shines brightly. Normally I would say that PvP is not to be engaged with till true endgame, when you're an expert on the title and understand all of its other systems, but not here and not this time. PvP in Lost Ark is completely isolated, and it's honestly fantastic. Once you unlock the arena, you're given the option to customize a maxed out page of character abilities and attributes so that you can fight against other players on equal ground. These matches are typically 3 versus 3 or 1 versus 1 and have a couple of different formats, but surprisingly, very surprisingly, the balance here is extremely good. The combat is fluid, smooth, and even when CC kicks in, which can be disgustingly long and super frustrating when you just get knocked on the ground for as long as you can be, the health values are all actually manipulated super well so that you can get a good, meaningful fight against someone where technical skill actually plays a part. You have to be very, very good to actually use the classes in the way they're designed and then like 100 to 0 someone. It doesn't happen very often. It only happens when the person is basically frame perfect in all of their animations and the person fails to dodge on every occasion. So it's pretty well balanced, even if sometimes you get knocked down and you almost want to slam the keyboard on your desk because you're just saying get up to your character, and they won't get up. Even in those cases, I can still respect how the PvP is balanced. This isn't brain dead button mashing PvP. If you do that, you're going to lose every single match. You have to time your dodges because of the 10-second cooldown, and you have to understand your exact ability pattern. How long to actually deploy something, how much swiftness you have, how long it will last, what is on their 8 skill hotbar, what class are they, when to actually use your abilities. All of it comes into play and more, and it's actually fantastic. I will be engaging with PvP myself a whole lot more in the future, and that is only possible because they've made something excellent here with their design choices. The next major system you uncover is world travel. This is the start of where Lost Ark really finds a better rhythm of sorts, because the actual world here is honestly enormous. There are a bunch of different land continents separated by open water. To traverse this, you eventually unlock a ship, and can sail out in the open collecting treasure and stopping off at different islands. Some of these islands are pointless until you have done a specific quest, for example. Others have difficult enemies or even high-level rewards. You'll be using the ship to reach specific places at specific times out in the ocean for endgame activities or general travel as you explore the world, but this, again, is where the game starts to find a much better rhythm. You can recruit and slot different crew members, upgrade your ship, or change its model, and the world has a number of different modifiers as well, such as sandstorms, that will impact what you do, where you go, and when you choose to do it. I had a decent amount of fun just stopping off at random islands and discovering new things. One had a ton of treasure and gave me sweet rewards. The other was a lighthouse and I couldn't even talk to the guy at the top, and there was a bunch more in between. Once you unlock world travel and start moving to new continents, the scale of this game starts to become much more clear. After that, you finally get to what most people will consider endgame. Endgame is achieved when you get to Vern City on the central continent, and when you finally get to gear score 302. At this point in time, you're able to access a whole slew of content that finally makes this game feel really worth it. One thing you can do is Chaos Dungeons, where you fight hordes of enemies over a short period of time. Another thing you can do is Guardian Raids, where you attack a giant enemy boss monster with no health bar, almost like a pseudo monster hunter of sorts. And after that, there are Abyssal Dungeons, or Island Exploration, with a clear notification system that keeps you apprised of what is starting next and where on the map it is, as well as what gear score it requires. There's a tremendous number of options here. You can explore the oceans, do challenge towers on a timer for different rewards, and even continue down the main story quest line till you unlock one, then eventually another unique ability called your Awakening Power. These consume an item to be used, which is kind of annoying, but it's not that big of a deal, and function like a sort of ultimate, if you will, in tandem with your other skills, which will round out your character to a nearly max level status. On top of this, there are daily and weekly challenges, plus a whole bunch more activities that are available. But in essence, when you get to Vern City at level 50, that is when the game actually gets good. So why are you doing all of these different endgame activities? The short answer is to raise your gear score, get stronger, and do bigger, better versions with different monsters for different rewards. The way you do this, however, is not going to be for everyone. The way you raise your gear score and get stronger is by honing the gear, using skill gems, and by acquiring engravings. Honing gear requires numerous different currency types and a lot of grinding. You amass resources and then risk those resources trying to raise your gear score with a chance at success. And you can actually port over your stats once you have a high level piece of gear. You're not like destroying it. So it's possible that you can still climb even when you waste a lot of resources and get really unlucky. But yeah, it means that there's RNG involved in your progression. And you can very well lose hours upon hours of work with just a few unlucky rolls. Skill gems are an endgame system where you augment your various different skills with droppable items, and engravings are a system where you build up to a certain threshold, utilizing stones with randomized chances for success and failure as you refine them, as well as general selection from a tiered recipe system, and then modifiers on gear so that you can get different combat bonuses active. And it's a really in-depth, like very far-reaching system. There's a lot here. You might notice here that I'm not going super in-depth on all of these because I don't even completely understand all of them myself just yet. I'm engaging with these systems actively, but there's a tremendous grind here and a lot of RNG. If there's enough interest, and if I consider myself a qualified expert in the future, I might start producing guides again, maybe, not sure, but as it stands, I am comfortably progressing through endgame with multiple characters, but I have not completed everything the game has to offer. I could spend 3,000 hours on this, and I doubt I would have completed everything the game actually has to offer. But there's one more thing. After you get to Vern and progress through that particular continent, achieving endgame status by all metrics, you also unlock something called a Power Pass. The Power Pass is an excellent thing and essentially lets you skip the leveling process with 2 more characters if you want to make them. This lets you jump right into endgame with 2 entirely different classes, but is also not unlimited, which means that leveling through the boring grind once actually counts triple. And I was honestly thrilled about this because the boring grind is itself the worst part of the game. When I got this, I immediately made a bard, a subclass of the mage, and I fucking hated it, but at least I have a support class in my back pocket for certain types of content. I will play it from time to time. The game heavily rewards having multiple characters. That's why the system exists. It rewards it with cross-pollination of bonuses and an emphasis on daily or weekly content. As an example here, just one example, 2 Chaos Dungeons, like the first 2 Chaos Dungeons you do will drop lots of gear per day, but after that it's only shards and other currency types, which will make the grind a lot more intense. This game has an incredible amount of content, but not all of it is good or even fundamentally necessary. What's worse, there is a microtransaction store, of course, and while some people might disagree that it's pay to win, it is undeniably pay to progress faster. The PvP is nullified in this equation because it's an equal footing customizable page of stats and abilities every time you enter, so you can't pay to win in the arena, that's not a thing, but you can pay real money and gain a distinct advantage in terms of time requirements as well as trade. Like I said earlier, auction house usage, yeah, that's tied to real-world cash. There's a FOMO mechanic in the store, and yes, it's a free-to-play title, it is, but it has heavy monetization, and they have certainly taken steps to incentivize the purchase of royal crystals. Whether or not you want to support that or buy into that part's up to you. Lost Ark is a well-established game with a ridiculous, completely ridiculous amount of content. A lot of that content is good, but some of it is redundant, useless, tedious, and completely unnecessary. The PvP is very, very strong, with great underlying design implementation and fundamental ideas, and the endgame is robust with many different options to progress. It's not like there's just one thing that you can do. It's not like other games or even other Amazon games where there's one or two things that you can do in endgame to finally get good gear. There's tons of options. There are entirely too many currency types and collectibles to the point of just sheer stupidity, making the game honestly feel cluttered at times, and there's a completely obnoxious item shop which absolutely does try and prey on your desire to advance quickly, but the sheer amount of positive content, because there is a lot of that too, that you're able to engage with here for free, it's a good deal. Sailing the open seas and finding a great island to explore is very enjoyable. Pushing through the different dungeon types or slaying guardians to hone gear, also enjoyable. Wasting tons of resources it took a long time to get because the game decided to screw you on a high percentage chance of success, bullshit, not fun, makes you want to quit completely. But by and large, it's got a lot to offer, and it's hard for me to say anything other than give it a try. It's got a pretty big emphasis on playing multiple characters. You'll want to save items and gear and runes and stones and gems and every stupid type of currency that they decided was a good idea on planet Earth, everything really, as you fill out a roster of playable classes, and for some people that's great. However, for others it can be tiring, and if your focus is on completing games, this won't be the title for you. This isn't a game where you complete it, possibly ever. This is a game where you play it at your own pace with a tremendous number of options, and you accept the fact that there are some really stupid choices. A totally unnecessary focus on quantity over quality in quite a few areas, and a lot of potential for frustration with endgame progression. By and large, as a free-to-play game, I understand the hype. I really do. I understand why the player base is so large right now, and I think it's probably worth checking out. The story is forgettable. The clutter of the currency types, the exchange mechanics, and the carrot on a stick relentless spam of rewards, like stupid little rewards all the time, will get really old after or during the first like 12 to 15 hours, but eventually there is something here. There's actually a lot here, in fact, and yeah, it's worth checking out. That's it. If I had to give a score out of 10, like if I absolutely had to, it would be a 3 out of 10 for story. Total dog shit, probably a 2 out of 10. A 9 out of 10 for PvP, surprisingly well crafted in almost every single respect. And an 8 out of 10 for PvE endgame. Tons of options, huge amount of options. Some of them are really, truly enjoyable. If you want to support, there are links down below. I'm working on Patreon and locals for channel funding instead of AdSense. Also Odyssey, a YouTube platform alternative. My entire content library is over there as well. Another YouTuber to check out. Merchandise, social media, Keeps, the video sponsor, of course, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.